はい、皆さんこんにちは、しゅんです。今回は語学力と記憶力を爆発的に向上させる超おすすめの勉強法、暗唱ということでお話ししていきたいなと思います。動画の後半では僕がスティーブ・ジョブズのスタンフォード大での伝説のスピーチっていうのを全編覚え切って暗唱披露していますので、最後まで楽しんでいってください。僕が暗唱を始めたのは19世紀の考古学者で十数カ国語を操ったとされるシュリーマンという人の話を聞いてからです。彼はたくさんの言語を操っていたわけですけれども、どういうふうに勉強していたかというと、自分の勉強している外国語で作文をして、それをネイティブに添削してもらって、添削を受けたものを暗唱する。そういった形で十数カ国語をマスターしたというふうに言われています。ちなみに彼本にね、自分の言語学習について書いていますので、興味のある方はこちらの本も見てみてください。で、僕は彼にインスパイアされて暗唱をね、行ってきたわけですけれども、今までたくさんのね、文章を暗唱して、で、暗唱の動画もたくさん作ってきています。暗唱の動画については概要欄にプレイリストでまとめていますので、ぜひチェックしてみてください。暗唱をやってきて僕が特に良かったなと思う点は2つありまして、まず1つ目は語学のセンスを磨くことができる。で、2つ目は記憶力が向上するですね。で、1つ目の語学のセンスが磨かれるってどういうことかっていうと、例えば英語だったら英語特有の自然な単語と単語の組み合わせってあるじゃないですか。コロケーションと言われるやつですね。そういうものだとか、前置詞、冠詞、数の取り方。この辺の日本人にとってはちょっと理解しづらい概念とかっていうものを文脈の中で覚えることができるわけですね。でもちろん多読多聴することによってもそういったコロケーションだとか難しい概念っていうのを文脈の中で身につけるっていうことはできるんですけど、暗唱というものは何十回も練習する必要があるわけですね、覚えるまでに。そういった表現だとか概念っていうのを体に染み込ませることができるっていうのが暗唱のいい点だと思っています。何十回も練習することでそういったものを自分の血肉にすることができるわけですね。僕は語学学習においてこの体で覚えるっていう側面非常に重要だと思っています。言語を使いこなせるようになるためには頭で理解するだけでは不十分で、やっぱり体で覚えないといけないと。もう楽器とかスポーツの練習と一緒で体に染み込ませるまでやるっていうことが重要だと思います。暗唱はここに役立ってきます。もう一つ良かったことっていうのがその記憶力が爆上がりするっていうことなんですけど、それは当然ですよね。暗唱って一定の長さの文章を覚えていくものなんで、記憶力っていうのが非常に重要になってきます。で、言うまでもないですけれども、語学学習において記憶力ってめちゃくちゃ大事ですよね。で、僕は今回後半でね、15分にも及ぶものすごく長いスピーチっていうのを暗唱しているわけなんですけれども、もちろん初めからこんな長いものできたわけではありません。最初は1分くらいの長さのものでも大変だなっていうふうに思ってましたし、覚えるまでの練習回数っていうのもすごくたくさん必要でした。1分くらいの長さのものを覚えたら、じゃあ次は3分くらいのものをやってみようかっていう感じでどんどん長くして、この15分っていうところまで来たわけですね。で、この過程で明らかに記憶力がもうぐっとね、上がりましたね。で、この向上した記憶力っていうのは当然ですけど単語を覚えたりするときにはめちゃくちゃ役立つんですが、他にも実際の試験でリーディングの問題解いたりとかリスニングの問題解いたりしてる時のリテンション、その力も向上したなというふうに思ってます。暗唱を通して長期記憶と短期記憶両方とも鍛えることができます。で、今回は暗唱の詳しい手順などについては省略します。それは以前作ったこちらの動画でめちゃくちゃ詳しく解説していますので、ぜひチェックしてみてください。こちらの動画は概要欄のプレイリストに入っています。今回15分のスピーチを暗唱しているわけなんですけれども、多くの人はそんな長いもの自分には絶対できないとか、この人はもともと記憶力が良かったんでしょうみたいな、そういうふうに思われる方もいらっしゃるかもしれません。でも先ほどねお話しした通り、僕は最初は1分の長さのものを覚えるのもすごく苦労していましたし、で1回見たものを覚えるみたいなね、そういう写真記憶とかのそういう特殊能力があるわけでもないです。多分記憶力で正規分布を取ったらこういう風になると思うんですけど、この山の結構高いところぐらいにいると思います。普通のね記憶力だと思います。もともとめちゃくちゃ記憶力が良かったとかっていうんじゃないんですけれども、練習することによって記憶力の限界を高めてきた、そういう風な感じだと自分では思っています。もちろん誰もが15分の長さのスピーチっていうのを暗唱できますっていう風に言うつもりはないんですけれども、皆さんが思っているほどは大変じゃないんだよっていうことも言っておきたいなと思います。参考までに僕がどういうふうに暗唱していくかっていうと、もう本当に言語を音楽的に捉えて覚えていくんですね。これどういうことかっていうと、例えば自分の好きな曲とかあるじゃないですか。で、好きな曲って何度も何度も聴いてたらだんだん覚えていきますよね。で、そういう感じで言語も自分の好きな音声っていうのを何回も何回も聞いて 音の記憶を脳内に作って覚えていくという感じです。だから、もう本当に音楽と同じような感じで、もう前から流れに沿って覚えていくみたいな感じですね。なので基本的には僕は音声があるものを選んで暗唱しています。皆さんも好きな曲をカラオケで歌ったりとか、家で口ずさんだりとかすることがあると思います。で、多分多くの人だったら10曲、20曲ぐらいは歌詞全部覚えてるんじゃないですかね。で、人によっては100曲以上覚えているっていう人もいると思います。多分僕も数えたことはないですけど、英語と日本語の歌両方合わせると100曲以上歌詞覚えてると思いますね。でも冷静になって考えると、これってものすごい分量じゃないですか。もう何時間分ですかっていう感じですよね。もちろん曲を覚えるのと言語の音声を覚えるっていうのは全然違いますよね。曲はそのメロディーがあるからそれで覚えるっていうのもあるんですけど、でも言葉の量自体だけで見ると皆さんも相当な量暗記することができているっていうことだと思うんですよ。だからポテンシャルがあるってことですね。ということで僕は暗唱するときは好きな音楽を何十回も聞くようにその音声を何度も聞いて頭の中に音の記憶を作って、で練習するときには歌を歌ったり楽器を演奏するときにこの流れが重要なように前から流れに乗って覚えていくようにしています。僕は暗唱の動画何度も出してるので、長い文章を覚えるにはどうすればいいんですか、コツとかあるんですかっていうふうに聞かれるんですけど、その時には毎回流れで覚えることですっていうふうに言ってますね。音声を何度も聞いて音の記憶を脳内に作って、で流れに沿って覚えていく。これがすごく重要だと思います。これについては全然共感できないとか理解できないっていう方もいらっしゃると思うので、それはそれで OK です。そういった方はですね、先ほどご紹介したこちらの動画で解説している方法を使って、地道に暗唱していっていただければなというふうに思います。あくまで僕がどういうふうに長い文章を覚えたりしているのかっていうことをちょっと共有したいなと思いまして、お話ししてみました。はい。では、いよいよ僕の暗唱を披露していきたいなと思います。はじめにもお話しした通り、今回暗唱しているのは、2005年、スティーブ・ジョブズがスタンフォード大学の卒業式で行った伝説のスピーチになっています。長さはだいたい15分くらいですね。で、僕はこのスピーチがもうめちゃくちゃ好きで、自分の人生と重ね合わせた時に共感できる部分っていうのがたくさんあって、もう本当に何度も聞きましたね。で、一応、ジョブズ本人の動画っていうのも概要欄に入れています。スクリプトも入れておきます。始める前に、これ15分の長さなので、噛んだらやり直すみたいなことをやってると一生終わらないので、僕滑舌も悪いですから、はい、噛んだりとかちょっと言いよどんだり言い直したりしているところについてはご了承くださいということでお願いします。あとはアクセントなんですけど、僕普段ちょっとイギリス寄りのアクセントなんですが、ジョブズアメリカ人なんでアメリカのアクセントですよね。だからそれがちょっと混じって変な感じになっているところもあるかもしれませんが、ぜひ楽しんでいただければなというふうに思います。それでは行きましょう。Thank you. I'm honored to be with you today for your commencement from one of the finest universities in the world. Truth be told, I never graduated from college, and this is the closest I've ever gotten to a college graduation. Today, I want to tell you 3 stories from my life. That's it. No big deal. Just 3 stories. The first story is about connecting the dots. I dropped out of Reed College after the first 6 months, but then stayed around as a drop-in for another 18 months or so before I really quit. So why did I drop out? It started before I was born. My biological mother was a young, unwed graduate student, and she decided to put me up for adoption. She felt very strongly that I should be adopted by college graduates, so everything was all set for me to be adopted at birth by a lawyer and his wife. Except that when I popped out, they decided at the last minute that they really wanted a girl. So my parents, who were on a waiting list, got a call in the middle of the night asking, "We've got an unexpected baby boy. Do you want him?" They said, "Of course." My biological mother found out later that my mother had never graduated from college and that my father had never graduated from high school. She refused to sign the final adoption papers. She only relented a few months later when my parents promised that I would go to college. This was the start in my life. And 17 years later, I did go to college, But I naively chose a college that was almost as expensive as Stanford, and all of my working class parents' savings were being spent on my college tuition. After 6 months, I couldn't see the value in it. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and no idea how college was going to help me figure it out. And here I was, spending all the money my parents had saved their entire life. And so I decided to drop out and trust that it would all work out okay. It was pretty scary at the time, but looking back, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. The minute I dropped out, I could stop taking the required classes that didn't interest me and begin dropping in on the ones that looked far more interesting. It wasn't all romantic. I didn't have a dorm room, so I slept on the floor in friends' rooms. I returned the Coke bottles for the 5-cent deposits to buy food with. And I would walk the 7 miles across town every Sunday night to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. I loved it. And much of what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on. Let me give you one example. Reed College at the time offered perhaps the best calligraphy instruction in the country. Throughout the campus, every poster, every label on every drawer was beautifully hand calligraphed. Because I had dropped out and didn't have to take the normal classes, I decided to take a calligraphy class to learn how to do this. I learned about serif and sans serif typefaces, about varying the amount of space between different letter combinations, about what makes great typography great. It was beautiful, historical, artistically subtle, in a way that science can't capture, and I found it fascinating. None of this had even the hope of any practical application in my life. But 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to me, and we designed it all into the Mac. It was the first computer with beautiful typography. If I had never dropped in on that single course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows just copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have them. If I had never dropped out, I would never have dropped in on that calligraphy class, and personal computers might not have the wonderful typography that they do. Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path, and that will make all the difference. My second story is about love and loss. I was lucky. I found what I loved to do early in life. Woz and I started Apple in my parents' garage when I was 20. We worked hard, and in 10 years, Apple had grown from just the two of us in a garage into a $2 billion company with over 4,000 employees. We just released our finest creation, the Macintosh, a year earlier, and then I just turned 30. And then I got fired. How can you get fired from a company you started? Well, as Apple grew, we hired someone who I thought was very talented to run the company with me. And for the first year or so, things went well. But then our visions of the future began to diverge, and eventually we had a falling out. When we did, our board of directors sided with him. And so at 30, I was out. And very publicly out. What had been the focus of my entire adult life was gone, and it was devastating. I really didn't know what to do for a few months. I felt that I had let the previous generation of entrepreneurs down, that I had dropped the baton as it was being passed to me. I met with David Packard and Bob Noyce and tried to apologize for screwing up so badly. I was a very public failure and I even thought about running away from the valley. But something slowly began to dawn on me. I still loved what I did. The turn of events at Apple had not changed that one bit. I'd been rejected, but I was still in love. So I decided to start over. I didn't see it then, but it turned out that getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again, less sure about everything. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life. During the next 5 years, I started a company named Next, another company named Pixar, and I fell in love with an amazing woman who would become my wife. Pixar went on to create the world's first computer-animated feature film, Toy Story, and is now the most successful animation studio in the world. In a remarkable turn of events, Apple bought Next, and I returned to Apple. And the technology we developed at Next is at the heart of Apple's current renaissance. And Laureen and I have a wonderful family together. I'm pretty sure none of this would have happened. I'm pretty sure none of this would have happened if I hadn't fired from Apple. It was awful tasting medicine, but I guess the patient needed it. Sometimes life's gonna hit you in the head with a brick. Don't lose faith. I'm convinced that the only thing that kept me going was that I loved what I did. You've got to find what you love, and that is as true for work as it is for your lovers. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking and don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you'll know when you find it. And like any great relationship, it just gets better and better as the years roll on. So keep looking and don't settle. My third story is about death. When I was 17, I read a quote that went something like, "If you live each day as if it was your last, someday you'll most certainly be right." It made an impression on me, and since then, for the past 33 years, I've looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. About a year ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. I had a scan at 7:30 in the morning and it clearly showed a tumor on my pancreas. I didn't even know what a pancreas was. The doctors told me this was almost certainly a type of cancer that is incurable and that I should expect to live no longer than 3 to 6 months. My doctor advised me to go home and get my affairs in order, which is doctor's code for prepare to die. It means to try and tell your kids everything you thought you'd have the next 10 years to tell them in just a few months. It means to make sure everything's buttoned up so that it will be as easy as possible for your families. It means to say your goodbyes. I lived with that diagnosis all day. Later that evening, I had a biopsy where they stuck an endoscope down my throat, through my stomach and into my intestines, put a needle into my pancreas and got a few cells from the tumor. I was sedated, but my wife, who was there, told me that when they viewed the cells under a microscope, the doctor started crying because it turned out to be a very rare form of pancreatic cancer that is curable with surgery. I had the surgery, and thankfully, I'm fine now. This was the closest I've been to facing death, and I hope it's the closest I get for a few more decades. Having lived through it, I can now say this to you with a bit more certainty than when death was a useful but purely intellectual concept. No one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. And yet, death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it. And that is as it should be, because death is very likely the single best invention of life. It's life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new. Right now, the new is you. But someday not too long from now, you will gradually become the old and be cleared away. Sorry to be so dramatic, but it's quite true. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. When I was young, there was an amazing publication called the Whole Earth Catalog, which was one of the Bibles of my generation. It was created by a fellow named Stuart Brand, not far from here in Menlo Park, and he brought it to life with his poetic touch. This was in the late 60s, before personal computers and desktop publishing. So it was all made with typewriters, scissors, and Polaroid cameras. It was sort of like Google in paperback form, 35 years before Google came along. It was idealistic, overflowing with neat tools and great notions. Stuart and his team put out several issues of the Whole Earth Catalog, and then, when he had run its course, they put out a final issue. It was the mid-1970s, and I was your age. On the back cover of their final issue was a photograph of an early morning country road, the kind you might find yourself hitchhiking on if you are so adventurous. Beneath it were the words, "Stay hungry, stay foolish." It was their farewell message as they signed off. Stay hungry, stay foolish. And I've always wished that for myself. And now, as you graduate to begin anew, I wish that for you. Stay hungry, stay foolish. Thank you all very much. はい。ということでいかがだったでしょうか。皆さんもですね、ぜひ自分が暗唱したいっていう風な音声を見つけて、それを何度も聞いて、前からね、こう流れに沿って覚えていくっていう今日の話を意識して、暗唱の練習取り組んでいただければなというふうに思います。僕すごい暗唱がね、好きですね、今は。暗唱ってできるようになるとめちゃくちゃ楽しいですよ。もうカラオケで歌を歌ってるのと同じような感じです。それからやっぱり今回のね、このスピーチ、本当に内容がいいですね。今度また別の動画で僕が特にどの辺が好きかっていうこともね、お話ししていきたいなと思います。3月は動画の更新が全然できなくてすいませんでした。ただおかげさまで普研1級に向けての勉強はかなり進んできていまして、一次試験は結構合格が見えてきたかなと思いますので、今後二次試験に向けてね、スピーキングも、二次試験に向けてってまだ一次も受けてないですけど、はい、スピーキングとかもしっかりやっていきたいなというふうに思ってます。で、動画の更新頻度っていうのももうちょっとね、アップしていきたいなと思います。今年の夏に普研1級必ず合格して、皆さんに行動でですね、努力しているんだっていうところを示していければなというふうに思ってます。また来週にちょっとしたお知らせ動画を出しますので、そちらもね、ぜひ見ていただければなと思います。それではまた次の動画でお会いしましょう。See you later.